Hey folks, it's Ben. We're here with our 1987 Pontiac Fiero. And we're doing front end work on this one. I think one of the last components we're doing on the front end is actually this driver's side lower ball joint. Now this one's more of a pain than the upper ball joint because we have to press it out and press it back in. So that's kind of a fun addition to what we're doing here. So we've got our car on jack stands, and then we're going to have our have our little jack here to kind of help us move the control arm up and down. But I believe the first task we actually have to do is release the bolt that is holding the top of the ball joint to essentially the spindle you see here. And we got to get that separated out, and then we'll pull the spindle aside, and then we'll actually use a press, and we'll press that out, and then we'll press the new one in, and then we'll reassemble. So it's actually not a hard thing to do. It's just something you do have to do. So enjoy us on our adventure as we do that. All right, so first thing we're going to do here is undo this castle nut. So there'll be a retaining pin in there you got to yank out. In our case, it's probably rusted out, so it's no big deal. Then we'll put a wrench on this. It's a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey proposition. So we'll go ahead and get that out. And then we got to come in with a pickle fork. So in our example here, we actually just mostly sheared off this pin. It's an 18 millimeter, and you just yank on that thing, and there's so much rust it'll just shear the pin out. And so we'll remove this nut. And since we're not using this ball joint again, what we'll do is we'll actually, but be careful, we're dealing with spring force here too, right? So what we'll do is we'll back this nut out all the way, and then we'll put it back on because this spring is looking to pull this control arm down, right? And so what we actually want to do is make sure we don't blow anything apart. So we'll back this nut up all the way. I should probably get a ratchet for this. And then we'll put it back on and thread it on a little bit, and then we're going to really hit it. Do it right. This destroys the ball joint in the process. Okay, so I'm panting because that was some work. This seems to be the hardest part actually. Pulling the ball joint, pressing the ball joint out isn't actually so hard. So we took our pickle fork, which this one is barely adequate. A little bigger, a little wider would have been handy. Stick it in between the two items here, and we hammer the hell out of that to get it in there. But hammering will only go so far. So then what we ended up doing is actually taking the big persuader here and coming in from the top and giving it a little love, and that popped it out just nice. So now our lower ball joint is actually free from the spindle. So next up for us is we're actually going to jack this up and get it out of the way so we can have just access to that lower ball joint. So now we have a strap into the front area, and I've actually separated the spindle you see here from the lower ball joint. So this lower control arm is now free. It's actually held up by this jack because that spring wants to push this out. The shock will hold it up, but really I just assume. Now we are supported in the front by a jack stand out front there, so it's just keeping the control arm up so we have a surface to work on. This is a press fit ball joint that you see. So what we need to do is use a press. So here's our big C-clamp press. It is a ball joint press, so you can get them at Harbor Freight or wherever, pretty cheap. And so what we do is we'll take one of our cups here that comes with it, and we'll put it right on top. And that's where we'll put the top of our press. And then on the lower part, the issue I had with the Pontiac Fiero versus other vehicles is that this space here is too, how do I say, and that's not even the right cup, fat. For a good cup to fit in there and not rub against the side. So what I actually did is I took a piece of exhaust pipe, I think it's 2 1/4 OD, and it actually nests up here perfect enough that it actually can push against the control arm, yet still let the ball joint come out. So this was a custom piece that I made for the Fiero because all the provided cups, they just had too much of a lip that they would kind of rest cockeyed or they wouldn't fit all the way in. And so but this exhaust piece, for the 2 times we've had to use it, or once so far, this will be the second, worked out fine. Then we put our lower cup for our little press on there, and we will just slowly work it out. Actually, what I'm gonna help everything along with a little bit of deep creep here, and let that hopefully lubricate and ease the exit of this ball joint, but no promises. So here's our setup where we have the top of our press pushing down on the top of the ball joint, and then our cup here, which is taking all the energy of the squishing and moving it around the ball joint to the control arm. It just popped, which means we're good. So now we just have to slowly work our way around. This is where dirt floors are nice because you can dig a hole if you don't jack your car up high enough. And we just keep going until it's free. The hole's cleaned out, so we have our ball joint in a little bit. And the biggest math problem you have to deal with is between the pressings, the press foot, feet, and the cups is to figure out what arrangement do you need so that you can press this thing in. The Fiero narrowness on the lower control arm is your biggest issue. Typically we press the bottom in with a cup, but you also kind of need the ability to have the shaft come up without being interfered with as well. So our press is coming up just a hair short to do that. So I think we got the configuration here, but I'm already against the control arm where we can tighten it up a little bit more, but then we're gonna have to reconfigure it to get the cup on the bottom. We're going up a little bit there, but yeah, I'm against the control arm now. So we'll have to get this cup, or the smallest cup I have, on the bottom of the ball joint. So we have to bring it all the way down. And then I think I'm gonna have to use my homemade exhaust one on top here so that we can get it so it'll all work together. The last little bit we have to do, we actually switch cups up to the top so we're not squeezing the top very hard. We have to use this piece of flat bar, which actually defects as we do it, but it keeps the pressure on the outside rim, but it makes it, you're ultimately looking for it to be against the control arm all the way around. So in order to get that perfectly flush, we take a bar, just use the press and a cup up top, and just make sure it's pressed all the way in. So with that, we are now ready to make sure it's clean, put the rubber boot on, and then place the spindle back into the, put the spindle back in. Well, we'll show you how it goes. Okay. So that's like so, and then we can start our nut, oddly, which is not a castle nut.
Is that supposed to, the boot supposed to be like on, or is it good?
It'll
where
get
it
compressed
Okay.
as it goes. It's very tight.
Okay.
Do you remember what size that is?
That is a 17? 19? 18?
18. So with our lower ball joint in, we're just going to double check since we also kind of did these upper ball joints. They're about 28 pound-feet of torque, so that's lots on those. That's about what a small wrench can do easily. And we're very similar in regards to torque on the bottom as well, which is probably going to be an 18. And then we're probably talking, what was it, 55 on this bottom one? Yeah, 55 on this guy here, which is kind of a pain because you need to hold it with that 5/16 wrench. When you actually drive the nut down, you actually have to hold this from spinning. Sometimes they have an Allen key, which is a little bit more convenient, but whatever. So, and my boot isn't down all the way yet, but we'll give it a little bit of wiggle time. And if it doesn't, then we'll make sure we get a screwdriver and pull that boot down over the ball joint there, and you can see that. And we also need to install a Zerk fitting and grease the heck out of it. So that's about what we've all got left, and our shock is in too, so we're good there. So I think we're getting right there. Let's get that Zerk fitting in. So I used a screwdriver and a rubber mallet, you see right there, and came around and actually hit the edge of that rubber boot. If I can find it, yeah, and knocked it down so that it is sealing around the base of the ball joint. So that's awesome. And then we came in and greased it. Well, we hear the tie rod end as well. Upper ball joint no longer has Zerk fitting. It's a forever, apparently. So there you go on that one. And with that, we are good to put the wheel back on. Now that we're torqued to spec, put the wheel back on, put this car back on the ground, and away we go. We're going to get an alignment after this because, well, we just did the ball joint and the upper ball joint in a prior video and the shock in another video. We actually did both sides, so everything's new. great time, get an alignment on this. So we'll take it into town, have it aligned, and we should be good to go. If you have any questions, we know we're a little brief on this one. It's kind of a long, over several days project, so it's kind of hard to splice videos together like that. But if you have any questions, ask them, comments, leave them, and subscribe to my channel, Turbo231, for more cool Fiero videos and all sorts of other vehicle videos. And we'll see you next time.